Raging Bull is a 1980 film by director Martin Scorsese that is widely regarded as one of the greatest ever made. Actor Robert De Niro stars as middleweight boxing champion Jake LaMotta, whose opponents in the ring pale next to his opponents within himself. The script was written by Paul Schrader and is based on Jake LaMotta's 1970 memoir, Raging Bull, My Story. In this analysis, I will examine the film's symbolism and its key themes such as rage, lust, gluttony, jealousy, atonement, and being born again or reincarnation. So let's get going with clip one. In the opening credits, we see the main character of the film shadowboxing in a boxing ring enveloped in smoke. Jake LaMotta is struggling with demons within himself. The boxing ring is his purgatory, and the blood he spills in it pays for the sins he commit outside of it. The boxing ring is also an outlet for his passions. His nickname, Raging Bull, implies a creature that is driven by its emotions and appetites. But just as passion brings about the boxer's downfall, it is also what helps him to turn his life around. The story opens in the dressing room of a nightclub where a fat and retired Jake LaMotta is preparing to do a stand-up routine. He sits in front of a mirror, but he is not looking at himself as he reads these lines. And though I'm no Olivier and before Sugar Ray would say, the thing ain't the ring, it's the play. So give me a stage where this bull here can rage, and though I can fight, I much rather recite that's entertainment. Jake's marriage is falling apart because his wife suspects him of infidelity. The explosive rage that makes him a great boxer is on display here as he and his wife get into a fight over a steak. Right off the bat, we get to see two sides of Jake's personality, rage and lack of discipline. This scene also introduces Jake's little brother Joey, played by Joe Pesci, and Frank Vincent, who plays the role of Salvi Batts, a member of the mafia. The clip following this one is a continuation of this scene where we get to see the brothers interact and learn that they are partners, with Joey being Jake's manager. Joey introduces Jake, who is still married, to a 15-year-old girl named Vicky. Jake saw her in a nightclub with a member of the mafia and became obsessed with her. Joey knew her and introduces them in this scene, which takes place at a public swimming pool. The black and white clothes Jake wears in this scene represents the conflict he has within himself, in contrast to Vicky, who wears all white. Also, the chain link fence enclosing the public pool, and that also separates Jake and Vicky, is in the pattern of crosses, going along with the religious iconography throughout the film. This scene is a montage of Jake's fights and him marrying Vicky, shot to look like a home movie, and also shot in color in contrast to the boxing cuts, which are shot in vintage black and white. These brief clips are the only instances in the film that Jake looks happy. This montage was an efficient way to move the film along without being distracted from the main theme, that of Jake's struggles within himself. This is the first of 6 meetings between LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson. To research actual boxing matches, Scorsese went to Madison Square Garden and saw fights with a friend. He realized that he didn't know how to shoot boxing matches. De Palma smiled at Scorsese and wished him luck. Director Michael Powell, the director of The Red Shoes and Peepin' Tom and other great films, was the one who first noticed that the gloves in the movie were the wrong color. This is what prompted Scorsese to shoot the film in black and white. The fights were patterned after dance styles. Each fight was different. from the tango, the foxtrot, the mambo, and the waltz. The fighter playing Sugar Ray is Johnny Barnes. He was one of many actual boxers Scorsese used in this movie. This scene shows one of the many battles confronting Jake, his weight. In between fights, he picks up a lot of weight. But also in this scene, we see that Vicky is unhappy. Also, we see the politics of boxing, that despite Jake's success, he is not guaranteed a shot. Joey convinces Jake to throw an upcoming fight with a weaker opponent named Billy Fox. Later, at a nightclub, Jake and his friends are having drinks and Jake is boasting about his upcoming bout with Gennaro when Vicky throws in her 2 cents saying that she thinks that Gennaro is good looking. Jake is consumed with jealousy and he is even more determined to destroy Gennaro in the following scene after this one. In this scene, Joey spots Jake's wife, Vicky, in a nightclub with a local hood named Salvi Batts, having a drink. Joey confronts them and he and Salvi fight. Once again, we have Jake and Sugar Ray in the third of their 6 fights. This is an interesting scene because at this point in the film, Jake is battling on several fronts in his life and career. He knows that he has to win every fight to even have the smallest chance of fighting for the title, which the mafia controls, and his storybook marriage to Vicky seems to be falling apart. This fight is symbolic in that it shows Jake's state of mind. The smoke, the groaning effects, the shimmering images as if through heat waves all add to the surreal point of view Jake has at this point of his career in life. Also, this match is a metaphor for Jake's entire life in that he's being led on blind instinct, as illustrated when Jake sits on the stool in his corner and the rope covers his eyes. His life, like this match, seems to be occurring in a nightmare that is further reinforced by the camera techniques used in this match. The camera whirls around to show Jake's perspective, as though the world is a merry-go-round. Jake throws a fight to get a shot at the title. He does this reluctantly at the urging of Joey, whose theory was that if the mafia saw that Jake was beatable, that they would give him a shot at the champ. Jake, a man with a great deal of pride, goes along with Joey and afterwards he breaks down. To a man like Jake, throwing a fight is the ultimate humiliation. But in keeping with the biblical metaphors used throughout this film, before honor, there's humility. In the scene after this, when Jake finally gets his shot at the champ. Shortly after winning the title, he questions his brother Joey about Vicky. Word got back around to Jake about the fight Joey had with Salvi the day Joey caught Vicky in the nightclub with Salvi. Joey won't tell Jack about the incident. Jack doesn't trust anybody, not even his own brother. This scene illustrates how Jake's sense of reality has been distorted by jealousy. Jake is out of control. He confronts Vicky about whether she is having an affair with his brother. Vicky fuels his rage with her own frustration by suggesting that they did have an affair, also making a lewd reference to the size of Joey's manhood, not thinking that Jake would actually take her literally, which he does. This scene further illustrates Jake as being enslaved to his impulses, doing things that he will later come to regret. After brutally beating his little brother in front of the man's wife and children, Jake faces his arch nemesis, Sugar Ray Robinson, for the 4th time alone. He suffers a savage and bloody beating that results in him losing the title he worked so hard to win. This scene represents the fall of Jake as a boxer. It's all downhill from this point. The fight in this scene is Jake receiving all the punishment his conscience makes him feel like he deserves because of the beating he gave his brother and wife when he accused them of having an affair. In this fight, Sugar Ray is the sum of all of Jake's sins. The rope holding Jake up is a cross on which he is crucified and bloodied under Sugar's barrage of punches. On the documentary, the sound editor said that he went for unusual sound effects for all of the fights, but for this one particularly, when Jake is on the ropes waiting for his punishment, the crowd noises die out and a lion's roar is cued to match Sugar launching himself at Jake. Also, the sound of winds howling replaced the roar of the spectators at ringside. Visually, cinematographer Michael Chapman surrounded the ring with thick smoke to make it look like hell and used the lights to transform Sugar Ray into a godlike silhouette. Jake is now retired and owns a nightclub where he flirts with the female customers. This clip comes just before a short, innocuous encounter with a couple of young ladies. They are fans of his, and to confirm that they are not underage, they each give him a big girl kiss on the mouth. After shooting the first act of the film, Scorsese suspended shooting for several months so that De Niro could gain weight to play the film's second act after Jake retires from boxing. The transformation resulted in De Niro going from a chiseled 150 pounds to almost 215 pounds. Without boxing as both a way to maintain his weight and also as a way to regulate his moral excesses, Jack's life spins out of control and he is charged with serving alcohol to a 14-year-old girl in his nightclub. He goes to prison where he confronts the demons inside of himself and comes out of prison broke but spiritually reborn. This is the darkest and most powerful sequence in the entire film as we see Jake succumb to all of his excesses without the discipline and balance of boxing, his little brother, or his wife. As the film started with him in the boxing ring alone, in this scene he is also alone with himself to confront the question why. His unlit cell represents not only his isolation as a human with his own distinct emotions and appetites, but also the darkness of his inability to see that out of all the men he faced in the ring, that he has always been his own worst enemy. Also, another note about his weight gain. Prior to his retirement, the training he underwent for his fights kept his weight from getting out of control. I interpret his weight gain as the total lack of discipline. Besides helping to keep his weight under control, the discipline of training in boxing and the beatings he took in the ring was a way of him repenting for his sins outside the ring. Jake the boxer is like those in the Old Testament of the Bible who offer animal sacrifices to God for their sins. After going to jail and dying, in a figurative sense, Jake comes out of this type of death as a man reborn. He realizes now that he can no longer sacrifice his body and flesh for atonement, and that now he must seek forgiveness from those he has hurt. Isaiah chapter 1, verses 11 through 16. I do not delight in the blood of bulls, or of lambs, or of goats. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. In the scene in the parking lot, Jake cries and begs Joey's forgiveness. This is a very powerful scene and marks the final stage in Jake's character arc, going from a man living on pure appetite and instinct, like his nickname Raging Bull suggests, to a broken man in touch with his humanity, from a man used to paying for sinning with his blood to a man who now pays with tears and asks for forgiveness. Also in the background in this scene, there is a cross, which serves as a sign of forgiveness. This is the final scene. Jake is full circle from where he began in the first scene, where he's in the dressing room rehearsing his lines. In that scene, he is not looking at himself in the mirror, but in this scene, he is looking at himself in the mirror, reading the famous lines from On the Waterfront, where Brando and his brother are in the back seat of the taxi. Here are Brando's lines from that film. Remember that night in the garden you came down to my dressing room and you said, "Kid, this ain't your night. We're going for the price on Wilson." You remember that? This ain't your night, my night. I could have taken Wilson apart. So what happens? He gets the title shot outdoors on the ballpark, and what do I get? A one-way ticket to Palookaville. You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit so I wouldn't have had to take them dives for the short end money. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum, which is what I am now. Let's face it, it was you, Charlie. After reciting these lines, Jake, dressed in a tuxedo, shadow boxes and leaves the dressing room. Charlie in this scene is himself. He has accepted responsibility for the mistakes he made in his life. The film ends with the epigraph from the book of John, chapter 9 and verse 25. The Jewish leaders summoned the man who had been blind a second time and told him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." Thank you for watching this video analysis of Director Martin Scorsese's 1980 film Raging Bull, starring Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. If you like this video, I would appreciate if you would give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and also subscribe to my channel for more videos such as this one. Thank you, and I will see you again soon.